Hello and welcome to another Infinity N5 Battle Report. The report is for a recent tournament I competed in August, at the end of August, and it is hosted by Western Australia Infinity. It is a one-day, 3-round tournament, mainly because most of the players, well, pretty much nearly all the players here are fathers of some description, and we only really have one day on a weekend to spare for our hobby, so we generally just play one-day, 3-round tournaments in Western Australia. And some of the players in this tournament are also going to compete in the Burn City Brawl in September, and this was a good opportunity for them to test their lists against these missions, which are actually in Burn City Brawl. So good luck to those players attending, and may you represent Western Australia proudly. So the missions for this tournament are B-Pong, Capture and Protect, and Firefight. B-Pong and Capture and Protect are objective-based missions, and Firefight is a killing type of mission. The points is set to 300, which is a standard game size. And these missions, as I said, are also found in the BCB lineup, and is another opportunity to test lists. So 8 players competed in the tournament, and I placed 6th overall. Now this is the first list for the objective-based missions, B-Pong and Capture and Protect. Now, one thing I noticed with all the lists that compete and play in tournaments, I've noticed that the winning lists generally tend to have cool names or some sort of ironic name attached to the lists. So I've decided to do that in the hopes, ironically of course, but in the hope that having a cool name for a list will make it more winnable. So I'll just go through and explain this list. This list is called Galvanize, and Galvanize is a song title from the Chemical Brothers, and in that song, where it slows down halfway through the song, it has the words push the button, because I originally just called this list the button pushing list, or button pushers, and I thought, well, let's be cool, I'll call it Galvanize, and that's the reference to the objective based list. So in my list I have a Kulak duo in group 2 to provide a +1 special dice to the heavy rocket launcher, and it is one of my ARO pieces. And the Kulaks are, on paper, quite a good medium infantry unit, and has good options for the fire teams in the Nomad faction. And I've chosen the Kulak HRL because of continuous damage, because I've come up against heavy rocket launchers and flamethrowers, and that continuous damage is just a very powerful mechanic in causing further wounds or causing further rolls to your opponent to hopefully increase the chances of taking off more wounds. And using it in blast mode helps negate cover, which is also a bonus. And what else? And also the heavy rocket launcher can also double up as a secondary gunfighter to my Cruiser Borak if he goes down. Now for this list, the Cruiser Borak is an active lieutenant, and I want to do this to utilize the lieutenant order to either place him in suppressive fire or to pull back into a better position after doing an attack run. Apologies for the continued pauses and heavy breathing. I'm just recovering from a month or 5 weeks of a mild pneumonia infection, so if you hear me breathing and coughing and whatnot, I apologize. I'm still recovering from that. Okay, so continuing. And to prevent loss of lieutenant, I have the Kulak chain of command, because I've experienced it a few times now. Being in loss of lieutenant is very crippling, and it definitely shuts down success during a mission. I have an Interventor killer hacking device, which is a must now for my lists. It works out that throwing a fast panda is the best way for the Interventor to be used, because using Trinity via the repeater, or any repeater, my opponent applies a mod -3 to his whip roll when he's counter hacking, and while it is through a firewall, I also gain protection from the firewall, so I have +3 to my BTS. and that just makes the killer hacker a much more powerful threat piece to my enemy hackers. And that is also why I chose the 0 with EM mines and deployable repeaters, because repeaters are probably the most successful defense for my lists and the way I play. And it's also why I chose a Moran and a Lucanite, because they both have repeaters and they're both mobile repeaters if I need them to be. And Morans and Lucanites have crazy koalas, and that's just more material in the midfield to slow my opponent down. I've chosen the Senator HMG as my arrow piece, and it's the main arrow piece. And while it is more expensive than the total reaction bot, it does have mimetism -3, has armor 3 and BS 13, and it makes for a better arrow option, I think. And having played against combined army total reaction bots, which have mimetism -3, I found them to be very difficult to kill. Like that mim -3 just makes a noticeable difference when it comes to BS attacks. So I thought I'll choose the Senator and hopefully it will perform in a similar fashion. And it just sits there. I have no intent of using it in the active turn. It is a purely dedicated arrow piece. I've included a Morlock for smoke and to deal with any powerful close combat threat pieces moving towards my deployment zone, and to also defend my deployment zone from any airborne deployment troopers. I decided to choose the Heckler with boarding shotgun +1 burst and Emirat. The Emirat is a large teardrop template weapon, and it is an EM ammunition, and I think of using this to slow down enemy alpha strikes or to counter annoying enemy arrow pieces such as total reaction bots, because isolating the enemy will prevent it from receiving further orders and hence slowing down an attack piece. So if there's a total reaction bot that is causing me problems, I can sneak forward, lay a template down and hopefully put it in a isolated and immobilized B state. Or if someone like Norkius comes along and happen to be successful, he's no longer fueled by his excessive pool of orders. He just stops dead and can only, obviously has to reset if he wants to continue, but if he fails, then next round he only has his irregular order and that's it. So I thought hard about this, and I think I think the Heckler with Emirat is probably a better option as a counter attack piece. I enjoy using Lucanite Sputniks in my games. It is another fast remote with a built-in repeater, and it provides more to my midfield hacking network projection. And unlike the Moran, it has a large teardrop template in the form of a heavy flamethrower, and it allows me to have a choice when dealing with enemy troopers. And the emitter is another EM weapon, and is a very good weapon to deal with enemy heavy infantry arrow pieces or tags. I have the Interventor Hacking Device Plus for defensive hacking and to utilize all the network projection in my list. I had a Mobile Brigada and Mars Spider as a duo as my shooter specialist fire team, and I intend on using them to push for midfield objectives. And the fire team can be split, placing the Mobile Brigada on suppressive fire to contend an objective, and the Mars Spider can move forward and push buttons and provide support to the Mobile Brigada, the Cruiser Borak and the Lunacod. And the standard 360-degree walk wall, because a 3-point annoying flash pulse arrow option is always worth taking if you have the 3 points to spare. So my list has enough in it to counter most problems, and these are the problems I've experienced in my weekly games against the other players who also played in this tournament. The only obvious weakness is I have no counter to mimetism heavy armies, because I have no multispectral visors. So that's the main weakness of this list, and hopefully the template weapons and spotlight programs can help negate this and make it a manageable problem. My second list, again, have to have a cool name for the list. So this one is titled The Kill Bury Me by the song from 30 Seconds to Mars. Mainly because in that music video, it's all about duplication. They have a lot of twins in that video, and the band members themselves play themselves twice. So this being a second list is a copy of a copy essentially. However, this list is tailored purely for Firefight. It is meant to be more durable by having more heavy infantry troopers. The downside to this list is that it is limited to 12 regular orders. However, the list is reasonably efficient because most of the troopers are in some sort of fire team, so it allows it to move troopers around more flexibly. It has 4 specialists and enough heavy infantry, veteran and elite troopers to complete most classified objectives. So it has Perseus and Mars Spider are a close combat duo, and both troopers in silhouette contact together can be a tough close combat team. The Mars Spider has a CC +1 burst in active, and Perseus has a +1 special dice from martial arts level 3. So the intent is, if they can both be in silhouette contact and engaged state, be quite a powerful team to take out anyone of significant threat. The Cruiser Borak is followed around by a repeater provided by the Securitate, just to provide a bit more protection to an active shooter. I have a Harris, which consists of the Mobile Brigada, Lieutenant and hacking device, and they are there to be more durable for Firefight and to provide a +1 special dice to the Grenza multi-sniper rifle. And the Grenza has MSV level 1 and marksmanship, so it makes it very good against plane troopers and mimetism -3 troopers. Generally, the Grenza will hit on a 16. If it's up against mimetism -6, then it's on a flat 13. Moran and Lucanod for the same midfield obstruction and to slow down my opponent's attacks. A Transductor's on for that order and just to defend my deployment zone, just to help offer a flash pulse against any airborne deployment troopers. And the Interventor Killer hacking device to kill any enemy hackers. And I included a Hellcat to take advantage of the special rules for airborne deployment troopers, and the plan is to land in the enemy deployment zone as a parachutist and just to take out as many single wound light infantry and medium infantry as possible. So it's quite a simple list. The plan is to shoot as much as I can and to complete as many classifieds as I can. Now for the games. So first up was B-Pong. So this is the table, and this is my deployment zone. So I ended up winning the lieutenant's role, and I chose deployment because I think that deployment is a much stronger option in most of the missions, because I think the terrain has much more of an impact on the game and how you maneuver across it and set your deployment up than just going first. Obviously you can deploy in a way where you can take advantage of first turn, but sometimes I think if you have bad terrain, then it sort of undermines that first turn ability. So for this mission, I wrote down deployment as the must-have for the lieutenant's role, and my reasoning was I need to have more cover in my half of the field so I can move up to the center console and the beacon with much less opportunity for my opponent to engage back, and to have more open areas on my opponent's half of the table so I can set up and engage him, and that's what I've done. So this side had, when you look down from more of a tabletop level, this had much more cover opportunities and passages of movement that allowed me to be unmolested, whereas my opponent's side had a lot of open areas, in particular up around through here, under this bridge through there, and through there. Like there was a lot of good fire lanes that I could take advantage of to slow down my opponent, whereas I had a lot of cover and I could easily just move up to the consoles, except for this one obviously because the ladder's on this side. So with that, my deployment zone here from left to right, I had the Mobile Brigada and Mars Spider Engineer as a duo here prone, ready to move up and to control this console. I had my Interventor with Hacking Device Plus here prone, my Lucanod Sputnik here facing down this way with a Crazy Koala up there. I had the Interventor Killer Hacker here, easy enough just to move up and throw excuse me, throw Fast Panda out to deter the opponent. This was after my turn, but originally the Moran was around here. Obviously he's moved up to here now, but the Moran was here and had their crazy koala there. This Morlock was down here originally. I had my Kulak heavy rocket launcher and chain of command duo on the right, with the rocket launcher looking down through there. There's a small line down through here and up on the building here. My Zero, and around underneath the bridge, you cannot see it, was the Heckler with Emarat and boarding shotgun. My HVT here on the left, and my Cruiser Borak was a reserve drop and was placed down this side of the building. My opponent had a Moran up here, prone. This camo token turned out to be an Intruder multi-sniper rifle. He had his Chimera and 3 Pupniks, one on the bridge, one down here and one here. Mars Spider was around here. Perseus was here standing, a moderator prone and another moderator down here prone. Total reaction bot up here, which proved to be quite a pain for me this game. And Interventor Killer Hacker, and down on this first story rooftop he had Jazz, and then Billy was just here. And he had a flash pulse bot also on this first floor, covering the back arc here for his deployment zone. So with that, what I did was my first turn I used the Impetuous Order for my Morlock to move up here, and then to throw smoke here, so it gives me a bit of coverage there. And because my Moran was just here and he was a bit exposed, I didn't want him to, so I just moved him up here, and eventually placing a Crazy Koala here between my opponent's Chimera and one of the Pupniks. And then what else I tried? I wanted to move my Mobile Brigada team over here, along here, but this TR bot was a bit of a problem, so I moved my Zero up along here, and he was discovered along the way by this Pupnik, and so ended up just placing a deployable repeater here with my Zero there. And I just did a few attempts at trying to isolate and immobilize reactions on. Didn't work out too well, and I ended up using the Killer Hacker to take out Jazz, but my opponent took out my Killer Hacker with his Interventor Killer Hacker. So there's only so much I could do, and I just wasn't having any luck trying to isolate and immobilize this total reaction bot. And then what else happened during the game? It was pretty much about my first turn. I did move my cruiser up along here, along the bottom floor of this corner, and then I put him in suppressor fire to cover down all the way down through there. So my opponent's cruiser HMG was there, and basically I took out his Pupnik here, and eventually this Pupnik here, and this bridge protected me from the total reaction bot there, so I was quite safe there, and I just kept on suppressor fire there, and so that presented a huge problem for my opponent. In my opponent's turn, my Sin Eater with HMG was here and has a good line of fire all the way down through there, and on the ground down here. It was a pretty commanding field, so I ended up taking out his Pupnik here. He activated Perseus and put a wound on Perseus. The Intruder multi-sniper rifle activated, and I took out his Intruder multi-sniper rifle because 4 burst versus 2 is much more in my favor. And there really wasn't much else to be done for him this turn. It was sort of, afterwards he commented, I pretty much kept him locked in his deployment zone, so he didn't do much. I think he moved the cruiser out here to do something and then moved it back, just sort of shuffling pieces around. Reconstituted Jazz and moved her down here next to the prone moderator. yeah, pretty much a difficult turn for my opponent. And then what happened? Overall, basically, I managed to move the Morlock, move it here, then up here, and while moving here, throw smoke here to block this out. And then I moved my Mobile Brigada and Mars Spider Duo across this bridge because it blocked the TR bot's line of fire. What happened? Just trying to think. That was sort of the main things I remember now. It's been a few days and my brain's a bit hazy on it. But eventually I ended up having the Mobile Brigada up here in contact with this console. My Moran eventually moved up to here in contact with this console. Now it was also in silhouette contact with the Chimera. Or was it just the Pupnik? No, I think it was the Chimera, but I put the Chimera in unconscious, so it didn't mean much anyway. But anyway, I had these two consoles by round 3 under my control. And I had my Cruiser Borak on the ground floor of this building in suppressive fire, but it took a while because Jazz fired a pitcher down here and took a few orders in round 2 to reset and move out and set up there, but I was still isolated, but you know, I wasn't immobilized as before. And eventually my opponent, you know, kudos to his skill in thinking about the situation, moved a Mars Spider around here and around here, so he avoided a lot of line of fire and managed to touch the beacon and just move it 2 inches that way. And then he ended up scoring late in the game for that 2 points for having it in my deployment, in my half of the table. And because I only controlled the consoles in the last turn, I could only score 1 point. We both completed our one classified objective. Sorry, I cannot remember what that was. And yeah, that was pretty much the end of the game. But I felt really good in this mission. I had a very good deployment. I thought a lot about how to deploy my troopers properly, and I stuck to my plan. Obviously, I prefer the Synit on the ground, because if you're up high, obviously you have more lines of fire to be taken out in ARO. But because it's a Neurosynetics HMG, I felt quite confident that I could cover a few key fire lanes and lock down. And it was a really good game, very challenging game, very frustrating for my opponent for sure. But he also made it frustrating for me in preventing me with that TR bot to move up to the other objective. And yeah, so that was B-Pong. A minor loss, but not too bad. I felt pretty good going into that game. The second game was Capture and Protect. Sorry, I forgot to mention my opponent in B-Pong. He was playing the Nomad faction as well, so it was Nomads versus Nomads. In Capture and Protect, this one, it was my Nomads versus Shazfasti, and playing against a player who's actually quite good, but he did admit that his list, which he played the same single list for the whole 3 games, is not really optimized for Capture and Protect, and so his list consisted of a Gualos with heavy rocket launcher, in a Harris fire team with an Endrome, the forward observer option with a nanoscreen, and a Jaith Cutthroat Spec Ops. And they were deployed just along this back corner of this building here. And then pretty much everything else was a camo token. Camo token here. Where else? He had one just sort of down in this stairwell here. Another one somewhere there and somewhere there. And he had a few camo tokens around the battlefield. So basically 4 troopers deployed. And for me, I had Mars Spider standing up, just sort of covering this area, because I knew he was going to have a AD trooper. I had a Killer Hacker, no, my Interventor Hacking Device Plus down here, prone, just again looking out to here. My Heckler, Mobile Brigada standing up, covering the the beacon, which is just down here. It's just a silhouette 2 marker, and also 365s, so covering down there and pretty much all the way around there. My Moran, again, just covering the back arc essentially. I had my, sorry, that was my Morlock down here. My Moran was actually up here with the crazy koala here, just to sort of prevent this Gualos from moving down here. I had my, so this is the base of this building. I had my Zero just here prone behind another piece of cover. What else? Warcall there, Intervented Killer Hacker there. My Kulak Rocket Launcher and Kulak Chain of Command here. And my cruiser was my reserve drop, which came down on top of this bridge, and basically just going to just take whatever gunfights he could. So that was that. And again, my opponent won this lieutenant role, so he chose initiative. Initiative would apply. What was it? I think he chose initiative, and he chose to go first. And I was happy with that because I chose deployment, because my plan for this mission was to choose deployment as well. And for this, it's sort of a reverse plan of B-Pong. I wanted more open areas around my half, so I could have good lines of fire to anything sneaking up to my bait beacon, whilst in his half I had a lot of cover, so I had a bit of freedom of movement, especially through here, to move up to the beacon and collect it. So that was my plan, sort of the opposite of B-Pong. And it sort of worked out to my favour too, this one. So my opponent's first turn, he ended up putting an impersonation marker just around here as his deployment, his reserve drop. Basically moved into here and fired here and here. Took out our Chain of Command and then just put my Kulak Heavy Rocket Launcher unconscious. His Gualo Harris moved around here and had taken out my Sin Eater, and what else? Tried to do a few other things. Tried to take out my cruiser, then I decided to put it prone. So my cruiser went prone, and then just pulled back because he only had really 10 orders in his list. He did try to bring Dakash on, but he looked at my deployment zone and realized there was no way he could do it, because I had enough guns pointing backwards that it would put his Dakash at risk. So he decided to delay that. He had a Noctifer missile launcher reveal to take out my Sin Eater, but my Sin Eater fired back and basically took out his Noctifer. And he jokingly said that happens every game. Every time he tries to reveal, it gets taken out. So I did that. He moved a camo token up to here, revealed to be a Caliban FO, and I think he completed one of his classifieds, which I think was Net Undermine. So with that, it was my turn. I was down the Sin Eater, and can't remember what else. But anyway, I moved my Morlock around to here just to stop this camo token from coming down any further. And this is when I thought, okay, it's round one. Played to the mission. He's pulled his Harris fire team back behind here, so I'm pretty much quite okay. So then I just decided to move my Zero. So pretty much moved all the way up here. His FO bot had a good line of fire here, so I had to do a full movement crawling to avoid it, and then do a cautious move to move out of there into cover behind here, and then crawl around, pick up this token, reveal myself, and pretty much do the same thing in reverse back here. Moved all the way back here, and then have my Lunicod come up because it's 8 inches, so I think it was 5 inches there, and then 3 back there, and basically just hand over the beacon and just move all the way down into here, facing that way. So that was my first turn. I was pretty happy with it. I had the beacon, brought it all the way back down here, and it's in a well defended zone apart from this gap here, because obviously these guys were unconscious and deleted. And so that was that for my first turn. I was pretty happy with that. I stuck to the mission. That was the plan, just to stick to the mission for this one. Just go hard, spend all my orders collecting the beacon and bringing it back if I can safely. So that was that. And then his second turn, he moved his fire team up along here in the middle, like in this area of the midfield. Had my cruiser. Did I put him up on suppressor fire? I cannot remember. Anyway, I think he dropped to cash. He tried to drop to cash. I don't think he had much luck. No, that's right. The Gualos fired and took out my Lunicod here and put it into unconscious level 2. So obviously that means I dropped the beacon, so I no longer have control of the beacon. So I scored the points for that first turn because he went second. Sorry, he went first. I went second. And then what else? Did a bit of fuffing about somewhere. I think he took out my Warcore. I think he tried to take out my Morlock, but the Morlock dodged and managed to dodge up there into cover. And that was about it. Dakash hasn't deployed, and I was still I lost control of the beacon, but I was still in a good position. So my following turn, the Marlborough Brigade activated, moved down here, picked up the beacon, and then moved back up here and just went prone up here, looking down there. I moved them around a bit in this turn, and then back up to here and placed a crazy koala down here behind this barricade. And now, because he had his Gualos here and the Jaith and the Fort Observer bot here, I moved this killer hacker up here by crawling and landed a fast panda around there, which put his guys in zone of control. So then I spent the hacking device plus, basically putting his Gualos in isolated and mobilized B state. And that was pretty much that turn, so I was pretty happy with that. And then, being a fool, I had a few orders. I was pretty comfortable where I was, and I thought, I have a few orders. What can I do? I'll try and move the Morlock around here to enter CC with those guys. Turns out I didn't have enough, but because the Gualos had line of fire here, he reset it on a 1 and cancelled his immobilized and isolated state. And so then I had to spend my last order and at least isolate him again, which was a good thing, but he wasn't immobilized B. And then come my opponent's turn, Dakash landed somewhere down here, I think, and then he had to do a whole lot of work, and that was basically come around here, tried to take out my mobile brigada, but it was he successfully dodged to here, and so he thought it can't kill me and make me drop the beacon. So then he went around here to collect my beacon and ended up here, or moving up here, and then my Kriza Borak, my Moran, which was standing at this point, fired a few shots at him and I think forced him to go unconscious and then drop the beacon, I think. And then again, because it was active turns, trying to take out my Moran with the Fort Observer bot, because he moved his Gualos into cover, ended up putting his Gualo into mobilized B state again, so it was bricked again, and then used the Moran to do the classified using the Fort Observer skill, which I completed on his Fort Observer bot, and basically just kept this Harris locked in the midfield and denied him the beacon. So I ended up scoring all the points for that, for having the beacon in my opponent's beacon in my deployment zone, and him not having a beacon, or did he have a beacon? Yeah, I think because Dakash is no wind in cap, so he might have been a no wind in cap, but still kept the beacon. But anyway, we both completed our classifieds, and I ended up scoring the points because I had the beacon in my zone. And this was actually a really good game. I really enjoyed it. A lot of people sort of hate Shazvasti, and not having multispectral visors probably was a disadvantage, but I think it wasn't in this case. You know, it wasn't at a disadvantage not having a spectral visor of some description. And some of the dice rolls went my way as well, especially with the impersonator that came down here, which was what, Speculo Killer. I think, you know, I was lucky enough to kill that. If not, that would have been a terrible run. He could have easily just killed a whole bunch of stuff of my stuff and could have changed the game. But it was a good fight, and I just kept to my plan and stuck to the mission, and ended up doing well for that. And the last game for the day was Firefight. Now my opponent was playing Oban, so JSA Oban sectorial, and he won this one, and he chose initiative, so I kept deployment. And I was hoping that I mean, my plan for this mission was to go first. Deployment for this mission is not the wisest option, so I thought if I win the lieutenant's role, I'll choose initiatives, deploy appropriately, and then just go hard and kill as many of his troopers. But he won the lieutenant's role and chose initiative and chose to go first, so I was left with the deployment. So I let him deploy on that side because this is the same table that I played B-Pong on, and I thought I will just have more open areas on my side to at least have more guns on him and to slow him down. So my opponent, I'm not 100% sure on his list, but he had an Arigato Senkenutai boarding shotgun, I think it was a boarding shotgun, a Kuroshi Rider Lieutenant, Yojimbo motorized, and a Yuan boarding shotgun. He also had a couple of hidden deployment troopers, which was a ninja, Oniwaban Shinobu Kitsune, and a Ryukin heavy rocket launcher. He had a Harris of a Tanko missile launcher, a Tanko with disco baller, and a Miyamoto Musashi FTO, and they were in a Harris. And that Harris was up here. He had a core fire team of 3 Ketsatsus with Thunderbolts, and they had BS attack -3, which is here, here, and here. And I think he had a Kempai chain of command here, and I think this one was a Kyosho killer hacking device. I can't remember. But his motorcycles, he had one down here behind this building, another one here, and I think he had Yojimbo behind this tall building here. His Ryukin was deployed here in hidden deployment. His reserve drop was this Oniwaban, which was here on my building, and the ninja was somewhere here, I think, as well, on this blue building here on the left. But they're all hidden deployed, so I didn't really know where they were. I knew he had something there, but I wasn't sure where. And knowing that JSA generally are a very high close combat list and like to, well, you know, they don't like to, but they're not afraid to be in close combat because they really excel. I thought, you know what, I'll just deploy everything off the ground. So I had most of my troopers deploy off the ground. So going from right to left, I had the flashpole spot here because this is the mission where you can have combat jump or AD troopers land all over the board without penalty. I'm just looking down here and here basically. I had my Lunacod, same thing, looking at this way and pretty much covering down there. Had my Mars Spine engineer here standing up, again just sort of looking down this way, maybe throw a Panzerfaust out. Lunacod's Crazy Koala was here, HVT here. Had the Interventor Killer Hacker here, my Cruiser Borak was my reserve drop here and is in the duo with a Securitate and Repeater. I had the Grenza multi-sniper rifle, MSV level 1 and marksmanship up here, pretty much just covering all the way there. My Mobile Brigada Hacker and my Mobile Brigada Lieutenant were here. My Moran was here with the Crazy Koala there, and I think Perseus was my reserve drop, and I just dropped him down there because I thought, well, at least he might be able to fight back against the the motorbikes if they come too close, because he's quite a good warband. And so that's my deployment zone. And so I made probably a few silly mistakes here. My opponent activated first things first, activated this Oniwaban, run it into my Brother Brigada Lieutenant, and basically just one kill him straight away. So that put me in loss of Lieutenant for the next turn, round 2. But my Grenza with Breaker Pistol killed the Oniwaban, so I was pretty happy with that. Then I think he fired the Tanko with missile launcher at my Cruiser Borak, and I kept it standing thinking I could take the range shot back at -3, but just unfortunately bad odds and bad dice, so I just ended up taking 1 wound, and I think putting it down prone. Did I put it down prone? No, I think it actually went to dead. Yeah, I think because the heavy rocket launcher it just went to dead. I just failed every armor save, so I saved 1, lost 1, and then had to re-roll because it's continuous damage, and lost the next one. It just went dead. And then he just sort of moved this fire team up here a bit. The missile launcher was here. I think the sniper managed to put 1 wound on the missile launcher, but Miyamoto and the other tanker moved up into here. Moved his bikes up around here on the ground. What else? And then I think, yeah, that's right. So he revealed his Ryukin, and that was the one that killed my Cruiser Borak, because that was heavy rocket launcher. Yeah, I put a wound on the missile launcher Tanko, and then revealed his Ryukin with surprise attack. So I was down like BS -12, I think. So yeah, ended up just dying from there. And I should have probably kept my Cruiser Borak prone. But hey, you have to make a mistake sometime. And that was about that for his first turn. I think his ninja revealed here, and then the crazy koala just killed it, which was good. I was very happy with that. And I think this crazy koala on the right from the Moran went up and tried to take out Miyamoto, but Miyamoto dodged. And that was the first turn. And then I was in loss of Lieutenant, so there was for my first turn, so there was not much I could do. So I basically I nominated this Securitate with Repeater as my Lieutenant, at the end. And all I did was just sort of move troops around. I just moved them, the Moran in a better position up here, I think, facing the stairs, and deploying another crazy koala. I think the Lunar Cod, I had it move over to here just to cover down here, place another crazy koala up there. Moved Perseus around here, I think, just to be ready for the attack from the Harris down here. And I think that was about it. I didn't spend all my orders. There was no point, so I just sort of moved other troopers into my position, into a better position. I think I moved the Mars Spider down here too, because he had a Panzerfaust into this corner here. So just spend a few irregular orders just to reconfigure my troops into a better position, and then just handed it over, because there's no point spending all of them. And then my opponent's turn, what did he do? Yeah, I think he moved Miyamoto up to here to take out the Moran, and the other Tanko sort of ended up here, and basically just one killed the Moran. And that was about it. I think he just sort of moved things out and nothing really happened. I think the Lunar Cod was trying to take out a few of the bikes as I'm moving around, and I think he just sort of kept them very conservatively back outside there. And I think he ended up destroying the Lunar Cod too, which was fair enough. But that was about it for that, I think. And then come my second turn, now that I had a full pool of orders, I moved my transductors on into group 1, so I think I had a full group 1 of 10 orders was it 8 orders? Might have been 8 orders, but anyway, brought on my Hellcat Spitfire, which came down this table edge. Oh, sorry, that's right. He landed a Yuan. Sorry, we'll go back a bit. He landed a Yuan here, moved around here through smoke, and engaged CC with Perseus here, and ended up dying. So that was quite a few orders. Perseus did go into no wound incapacitation, however, but I stopped that attack run. So then my turn 2, I thought, right, you know what, time to be a bit aggressive here. Dropped in the Spitfire Hellcat behind this building here on the table edge, because he does have parachutists, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to take advantage of that. Basically, he moved up this cover here, and then took out his motorbike here, took out his other motorbike here, tried to take out his other motorbike, Yojimbo, which managed to dodge all the way around here. Or was it? I think it might have been up there actually. I think it was up there. And that, you know, that used up a fair few orders, and then did a super jump jet propulsion up down here, and then took out his Tanko missile launcher here. And a couple of Kassetsus fired back, but managed to save, and then just kept my Hellcat behind this. Sorry, it's a bit full. Kept it behind this piece of cover in the back here, my opponent's terrain, and just kept it there. And then Perseus came around and took out the Tanko here, by moving up and doing CC and taking that out. And that was really about it. I think the Mars Spider at some point took out his heavy rocket launcher Ryukin, because I remember that being removed from the board. And then my opponent's turn, Miyamoto Masashi came down, jumped here, took out my Marlboro Brigada hacker, jumped back, and ended up in contact with that console there. No, sorry, my Perseus put this guy unconscious. Sorry, didn't CC just yet. And then Miyamoto had all that free reign to do that. I think that was about it. And then in my turn, Perseus went up, did a coup de grace, and scored my classified Predator. And I think I scored another classified, I can't remember. And that was really sort of the end of it. I didn't have much more on. I couldn't achieve. I mean, my plan was to ignore the Panoplies anyway, because it's only worth 1 objective point. The whole point was to take out more lieutenants and more army points and more specialists. And so that was my last game. And yeah, that was a loss as well. But it was I think by dropping the Hellcat definitely made the game more favourable in my position. I still lost this game, but it was only a minor loss, not a big one. But yeah, that definitely put my opponent on the back pedal a bit, taking out his motorbikes and Tanko missile launcher. And yeah, it was a good game all around. I enjoyed this one too, so I was pretty happy with the games overall. And that's the end of that. Now we'll go on to the final part of the video. And now for the after action review of the tournament. So the results of B-Pong. My opponent scored in the last turn of his game. He moved the beacon into my half of the table, so he scored 2 objective points. I controlled it, well I controlled both, but you only score 1 point because you only need at least 1. So it doesn't matter if you have both or not. So even though I controlled both consoles, I only received 1 objective point. And we both completed our classified objectives. So total army points was 2 versus 3, going to my opponent for the win. Next one, capture and protect. I captured my opponent's beacon for all 3 rounds, so that allowed me to accumulate 6 objective points. My opponent did have control of mine for his last turn, so he scored 2 for the end of that round. I had his beacon in my deployment zone for another 2 points, and I completed 1 classified, and he completed both of his. So total OP score is 9-4, with a 9 going to me. Oh, sorry. yeah, even though we had one classified, my opponent received 2 objective points because his classified was the Intelcom card provision, which had that little symbol on it, and so he used that to claim another objective point, which is a very smart play actually. For Firefight, so I'm pretty sure I did kill my opponent's lieutenant. He did mention during the game something about a motorbike being lieutenant, but I wasn't too sure. And then at the end of the game, when we're just adding up scores, my opponent was telling me that no, he killed my lieutenant and I did not kill his. So I'm a bit skeptical about that one, but that's sort of partially my fault anyway, as I'll explain later. So my opponent did kill more specialists. He killed 1 more than I did, so he earns that 2 objective points. He claimed to kill my lieutenant and I did not kill his, so he claimed those 2 objective points. I killed more army points, and he acquired an item from the Panoply, and I completed 2 of my classified objectives. So end of the game, objective points are 4 versus 5, with 5 going to my opponent. Some of the lessons learned. As stated, I think record keeping is probably what let me down in Firefight. Even though I had a notepad and pen there to keep score of metachemistry rolls and booty rolls, I did not utilize it during that game. So I should have taken note of what I killed, and I should have quizzed my opponent and said, is that your lieutenant? Like, you mentioning it, is that your lieutenant? And get him to confirm it. And that way I could definitely know what I really needed to complete to score. Sorry. Another thing I learned is I spent a lot of time planning how to deploy my lists, and I think that paid off in the pre-planning phase in the lead up to the tournament. Knowing how I wanted to utilize my troopers and where to deploy them, one makes deployment a lot easier because I don't have to think on the day where to deploy my troopers, and depending on the terrain I can sort of be flexible. So the example would be in the first game, B-Pong. My rule for the Senator HMG was to keep it on the ground at all times, because every time I place something up high on top of a building for ARO duty, it generally gets targeted by my opponent. So the rule for the tournament was to keep it on the ground, but looking at the terrain, I made a concession and thought, okay, I'll put it up on the roof covering this area. It'll be more effective, and it turned out to be a very good deployment setup. And even in Capture and Protect against my opponent with Shasvasti, because I deployed in a manner that I would be expecting an AD trooper, and that just comes from experience playing casually. Most opponents will always have some sort of AD trooper that can land in the deployment zone. It's always good to set up for that. Even if it doesn't happen, at least I have enough guns facing backwards to at least give myself a free shot at any deployment zone parachutist from entering. And the lieutenant's role, I planned out what to choose for each scenario. So for the objective missions, B-Pong and Capture and Protect, I decided I would choose deployment over initiative, because I think deployment is a stronger mechanic in the game than initiative, because sometimes you can still win if you don't have initiative. But I think if you choose the right deployment zone based on the terrain on the table, I think it allows you to have more freedom of movement to the midfield, which is what I did for B-Pong. And then for Capture and Protect, having more open areas in my midfield made it easier for me to defend my beacon, because my opponent did have a hard time trying to move towards my beacon. And obviously for Firefight, I decided that if I won the lieutenant's role, initiative and going the first turn would be the best option, because you want to maximize that ability to shoot your opponent's army to pieces. Obviously my opponent won that and chose that, so kudos to him. That gave him the advantage in that mission. But I think having a bit of an idea of what to do for the missions beforehand also sort of helps. And because it's written down in the notebook that I take with me, it's less thinking on the day, because I know what I need to do. I just need to set up and then play the game. So that's my lessons learned for this tournament. And yeah. So overall, I was really happy with this tournament. was happy with the way I built my lists. I've learned that you cannot fit square pegs into round holes, and I need to pick the right troopers for my playstyle and to complete the objectives. So yeah, I had a really good game, really good time this tournament, and I've taken a lot of lessons from all the casual games to build my lists the way I did, and overall it was just a good day. You know, my dice were not failing me badly as some other players were that day, which is noticeably observable. And yeah, it was just overall just a good tournament, and I felt really good going into it, and I felt really good during the game, and yeah, it was just a good time overall. So that is the end of the battle report, and feel free to share any thoughts or observations you have about the tournament and my lessons learned in the comments below. And thank you for watching, and may your dice rolls be successful.